G'day, it's Michael Baragwanath here. I'm the Managing Director at Clime. I just want to do a quick video to introduce our new Chief Investment Officer, Leo Economides. And you'd think with a surname like Baragwanath I get it right, but I'm actually terrible at pronouncing anything and writing anything. That's why I get people smarter than me to do everything. And then I've got Mitch Tolhurst here and Tim Jones, who both head up our private credit and our new offerings in unlisted debt. So without further ado, you have the mic. Welcome. And I guess it'd be great to get a bit of background on sort of where you've come from and what we're doing here now with Clime.
Yep. Okay. I was born at a very young age. But my working career started at Bankers Trust after doing some actuarial work at university. And Bankers Trust was an interesting environment and got me very excited in the financial markets. So from there, I went and worked in a small boutique with two of the directors there, and then went on to work at Macquarie. Most of my career has been focused on real estate, infrastructure and leasing. And from that, every time you do a deal, you're structuring an investment. And that has brought me into investment management for the last probably 20 years of my career.
Great. And then you also ran an equities fund that you have your own sort of approach.
Property securities fund. My fund. In learning how to structure investments over the years, a couple of things have sort of stayed in my mind. One, trying to not lose money on investments. So through that, I've developed my own methodology for managing investments, which really focuses on trying to protect people's capital. And you can do that a number of ways. You can do it to the ultimate by using options and other insurance contracts. But even in just selecting a stock and creating a portfolio, you can actually use a lot of techniques to manage risk, which a lot of people don't use in normal equity markets. You see it more in hedge funds.
Right, cool. Yeah, and from my perspective, what we're looking to build with Clime is a diversified multi-asset, funds management business across all these different asset classes. And what I found great is that you're across all these different asset classes. And normally you have people that are just equities guys or just property guys. And we've all seen that where it's just like, I'm a property guy or I'm a debt guy. And so it's quite unique, I think, to have someone like yourself that's across the full gamut.
I think part of the reason for that is by working in investment banking and then in boutiques, you end up taking the knowledge you might learn in one or two areas and, using it in other areas. So give you an example, the initial leasing and international leasing that I did, we actually used that technology to do real estate and infrastructure in the boutique, which at first glance, you wouldn't think that would make sense. But it actually added a lot of value to the clients.
No, I get it, because a lot of my time was sort of private consulting in between, looking after different licensees and, the type of work you do on lending, for example, when you're doing your due diligence on a property deal, then you look at the APL you're constructing from a licensee perspective and you're like, well, I'm going to take that same analytical due diligence approach to these products, how we use them, why we use them. So, no, I totally get it. And it's been great to have you come on and jump into it. So you came in as the product manager and then very quickly moved straight up into the main role. Yeah,
basically I was reporting to Tim, but now he's reporting to me. So it's funny how things change in a short period.
Yeah. Well, Tim's he's obviously been around for a while and also very good at identifying talent and bringing it up through the ranks, including above himself.
There's going to be an edit here.
Very much so.
No, there's no edits. That's it.
I don't care. Tim's the one I gave shit to. That'll be
happy to
Well, Tim, that's a good handover.
Yeah, good idea. So, look, just a little bit about my background. Obviously, sort of worked for a family office, then built up a family office sort of for 15 years, valuation background, and finance background, and built up that family office, and then went and worked for Macquarie for circa 10 years in that structured finance, but it's all structured in around real estate. And then when I came to the end of my journey there with Macquarie, went and sort of structured a few funds for a few groups, looking at structured debt products and also structured equity products, but mainly focused on the debt and then doing individual transactions in those debt funds. So really focused in on that side of the business, and obviously with Clime, obviously a huge opportunity to do that. They've got already some debt products on their menu, and it's good to bring that in and potentially offer that to the Clime clients. So
Great.
yeah, that's sort of.
And we've got coast to coast covered here because you're in Perth, I'm in Adelaide, and you're in Sydney, and you're in Sydney. So, and we've got a Melbourne office as well.
Yeah.
So we've got, we've got, a couple of guys in Queensland. So we just really need Darwin and Tassie, and we've got the whole country. So all good. And Mitch, you're in Sydney as well, but a little bit out west.
Yeah, correct. South. So Wollongong.
South, right. I don't know. It's all the same to me. In Sydney, it's just houses and houses and houses.
Yeah, but most of my time has been in banking and family office. So I started off in a Big Four bank in property, quickly moved around the various divisions. But it was quite an intentional decision because it was a way that I could see a lot of transactions really fast so that I could kind of pick up as much as I possibly could, in the property realm. And then I stepped out into family office, helped build up a family office for 7 or 8 years. And that's when I really experienced, I guess, the equity side of stuff, being, project sponsor and whatnot. And spent a number of years there, and then kind of have a private capital advisory business where, doing a lot of development management, project management, and then mixing the two together is probably the biggest kind of value add, I guess, for our debt fund that we're launching. Having that real construction experience, development management experience, mix that with some finance, and you're able to kind of really quickly sniff out high quality loans that you'd like to participate in, and furthermore, potentially equity as well. So having that knowledge base and that resource beyond just myself as well, given that there are, additional resources external to Clime that we can call upon as well to really thoroughly assess transactions to make sure we have a very clean book, which is in alignment with what Leo's intention is to have a low risk property fund, debt fund,
Make money.
Make money, yeah.
It also matches our clients.
Yeah, it matches our clients as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. So,
No, that's good.
Yeah.
And then so, we're all here and I've dragged you all to Adelaide, as I do with everyone that deals with me, is drag you to my home state. We don't have the vineyards behind us, but at least we've got the Adelaide parklands. So launching this debt fund, I'm keen to get you guys to just talk about how we've structured it, because it is a little bit different. It's not just a straight mortgage fund. It'd be good to maybe just round out a conversation on what we think the opportunities and problems are in private debt, and how we're going to tackle them with this sort of solution. Go,
Tim.
You want me to start?
Go on.
Okay. There's obviously lots of debt funds out there doing the private credit. Where I think we can offer something different to our clients is probably the fact that we've got guys in the room here that actually have lived and breathed deals right from start to finish, and they've seen the problems associated with developers and deals, and we can get our hands dirty and actually fix those problems up and actually identify those problems before they actually become a problem. So I think that is a probably a key attribute that we could probably offer, as well as it's a private credit is it's a good way to for investors to tip money in and earn a fairly low risk return from their capital. And I think that's it's a good asset class, and I actually personally take exposure to it, and I think it's a product that people generally should have exposure to.
It's a new offering really in the last, it's always been around, but it's really gotten a lot bigger, I think, in the last 5 to 7 years, I would think.
What's happened is globally there's been a lot of entities that invest in debt and private debt. There's quite a few hedge funds in America that specialise in private debt, whether it's distressed debt or even just targeting private debt. But I think what's happened in Australia, because people have not been happy with the property cycle and the corporate earnings cycle, they've actually realised that debt might be a better risk return. So that's why we're seeing the growth. I guess the challenge for us is to pitch our product to our clients and not try and emulate others and deliver that. That's all we have to do.
You've also seen growth as a result of, the Big Four banks stepping in and out of the marketplace as well. It's very similar to the States and other parts of the world where the private debt sector is just growing. And it's filling that gap from where the banks are no longer participating, or they're just participating less as well.
Yeah. Which is bringing its own problems, I think, because there's a lot of deals that stack up perfectly fine with bank debt. And then when you add too much private credit, you can take a good strategy and a good transaction and actually make it bad. So one of the things that I'm really thrilled about, I think that you guys won't say, but I can, and you touched on it, is having the capability to work through transactions when they go wrong, because probably the biggest thing is these things sometimes do go wrong, and often it comes down to lack of disclosure, or sometimes just they're unlucky. That can happen. But it's what you are able to do with those transactions when something goes wrong. It's having the capital to fix them, the capital to step in, capital to take them over. All of those other things can be really critical. But yeah, I've definitely seen that where you look at some deals and go, look, if the interest rate was 5%, this thing would actually work, but at 15, it's broken.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And if you're delayed for whatever circumstance, then your interest capitalisation just eats into all the profit.
And that's where some of the more aggressive private lenders take advantage, because they know you need money, so they'll push the pricing to the limit.
And our view,
to get the deal.
Our collective view is that we're not here to be a loan to own. It's just that we do have the skill set if the borrower does need to be propped up.
Yep.
It's not a loan to own structure, which many debt funds out there, or private credit out there is that.
In fact, to go further, that's one of the criteria to make sure that we can manage a loan if we're assessing it in case it goes bad. That's one of the criteria for going into the deal.
Yeah, great. And so the other thing we've looked to do that maybe, Leah, you can talk to is this blending of asset classes, because we're not just doing a mortgage debt fund, right? It's like you've got Vincent, who's been with Clime for a long time, managing the listed credit side, while your guys will be handling mainly the unlisted credit. Yep. So private debt will sit with you, and then Vincent manages the listed credit.
I think the idea of blending a fund between private credit and more liquid credit and cash is there's a couple of reasons. One, the main one is to create some liquidity so we can have an open-end fund. Otherwise, we'll have to do a series of funds. I think the other reason, there's opportunities in both markets, and at the moment the opportunity is to be in private markets, but that may change over time. As rates go up, we might actually find that we can put more money into more traditional debt, but by combining the two, we'll still get a better return and a better risk-return profile. So I think they're the main two reasons. I think as the fund grows, it'll be very interesting from our point of view at what point we try and put a limit on the fund size to make sure that we keep the quality of our loans and our fixed interest book the way we want to keep it. So that's going to be an interesting challenge for us as we grow.
Yeah. And trying to diversify the fund, I think that's the other thing. You sort of don't want to have all of one sector. You want to have residential, commercial, industrial. You do want to actually sort of diversify as much as you can, and also deal sizes as well. You want to make sure they're diversified.
And geographic location. You don't want to be investing in an area or a geographic location that you're not an expert in. But I think, confidently we can cover off pretty much most of the eastern seaboard between our respective experience and position in the market-place.
And Tim can cover Perth.
And there's a bit of Perth in there as well.
And I think Adelaide.
And I think the current exposures that sort of will go into the fund are sort of New South Wales mainly, and sort of and probably Victoria as well. And again, they're in major sort of cities, and I think the objective is to stay in those capital cities, and not to sort of probably go into too many regional locations.
High quality borrowers, good locations, proven track record.
And once you have a decent fund size and a bit of capital, also people will bring you the right deals, so you can actually work out what you need to make your portfolio diversified.
Correct.
And that's something that will emerge over time as we get bigger.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think of, so we've gone through a couple of sectors there, you've got industrial and commercial and residential. One of the things that John and I prattle on a lot about is like housing affordability and intergenerational wealth and all these other sort of areas. What's the collective view on affordability of housing and the ability for developments to sort of fill that gap? Like, do you think there's just because there's so much conjecture around this. On one hand, the actual rate of births and deaths in Australia is tilting off. So without migration, our population goes backwards. Yeah. But then we have this massive housing shortage. So is there a risk of us oversupplying the housing market, or are we too far away from that? And what does that look like?
Look, I'll attempt to answer that in two sections. I think that initially with sort of people sort of with build to rent. I mean, that's a big sector that's sort of that's going to grow, especially with AI and people becoming, especially our kids. You know, they're becoming more transportable around the world, so they're going to want to live in different spots. So no, they're not going to want any fixed address when they're below 30. So some of those people are sort of quite transient, and I think that is the future. But sort of probably there's still going to be those people that are over 30 that are still going to have families and still going to need those sort of housing. And again, that's just going to expand. Yeah. So
it's interesting. I think when you talk to younger people, they don't want that. They want to be able to buy a house. There's a lot of angst, I think, around it's. But the build to rent is a big thing in Europe. It's a huge thing in Europe, and I think people in Australia feel like they shouldn't have to do that, but they're sort of being pushed into it a little bit.
Yeah, with housing prices, you know, where they're sitting at the moment, and it's just it's not going down. It just seems to be going sort of in one. You know, it's probably stabilised a bit, but it's certainly.
Actually, one other thing before this recording, we were talking about co-living before. Do you want to quickly just jump into that a bit?
Yeah. Look, there's different segments. Obviously, there's student accommodation. There's co-living, and then there's which is sort of a sector which is. People living there 3 months to 6 months to 12 months. And again, that can be a sort of small studio, sort of generally anywhere from 20 square metres to 30 square metres. Student living's a little bit different. That's more sort of 15 to 20, and then you get 2 people in one room. So it's not always 2 people, but you can have it with 2 people in one room, and they're sharing a bathroom. So that sort of tends to be that sort of consolidated living. So that's the different types, and then there's actually people that can't afford to buy a house that want to live in an area, and they tend to sort of go into the co-living sort of sector as well. So that's sort of, and it's actually a growing segment which is going in all the strategic locations right through sort of New South Wales, right through Melbourne. It's quite big in Melbourne. I don't think Adelaide's probably picked up on it as much, but it's certainly going into Western Australia.
Because there's co-living and then there's just turning residential houses into apartments sort of thing, isn't there? Are they the same or different?
Well, there's a bit of that happening too, where they just buy a standard residential home, and someone will actually refurbish that home and actually add an extra room on there, so they actually have 5 separate rooms. And then they'll rent out all those rooms, and they're allowed to do it under local council requirements.
Yeah, I think in South Australia, I don't think the law's caught up to that quite, because it ends up being someone being the main tenant and then everyone else being subtenants. Whereas I know in Queensland, when they first did this, they're all equally tenants.
Yeah.
So they have their own space. That, to be honest, that's slightly off topic, but I know George loves us to meander, so it's fine. But that to me always seems like a really great solution, because I look at like a lot of these houses in Sydney, Melbourne, and you have a lot of, in some cases, elderly people that have this massive house that they don't utilise, that, they don't want to move either. They don't want to leave, and why should they? It's their house. But the utility of the property is really low. I think I saw the last ABS statistic was saying that something like 1 million vacant houses on the night, right?
Yeah.
Of the ABS study. But then there was also like the utilisation rate was something like 1.8 people per house. Yeah. And so they go, well, if the average Australian home is 3 bedrooms plus, and the average amount of people in each house is about 1.8, there's like 50% of our housing capacity underutilised. Now, you're not going to, not everyone's going to go, great, now I'll bring people I don't know into my home. But you'd have to think there's quite a few houses there that you'd say, well, if you're using one corner of the house, could it be reconfigured easily to deliver something more?
And yield-wise, that really stacks up.
Right.
If you look at a house, you're buying a house for $2 million, and if you're leasing each room for whatever rent you can get, to couples, it actually works.
And there are builders around that will actually refit those rooms and put like a small bathroom and things like that in there. So you end up with a little apartment. See, that I remember seeing that and go, geez, that makes a lot of sense. Just to go like at one house. And it made sense to me, I think, because my mother-in-law's house is sort of designed like that, like 4 bedrooms in the corners with a nice big kitchen lounge thing in the area. And I'm like, it looks like a little castle.
Yeah.
Right? And so I'm like, well, each one of those could have a bathroom, and then bang, you've got this like much higher density, but it's still single story. Because, I know certainly here in Adelaide, people get really uppity about high rise. They really don't like someone creating a shadow. I don't know why, because it's bloody hot here, so I like shade, but they hate it. So maybe that's a solution, is increasing density in housing with existing stock. Keep the heritage, keep the look and feel, just probably more cars on the road, I guess.
Yeah. In employment nodes, it really works. Like I know sort of, I know what your major employment node is around here, but it'll be near the coast somewhere. And that sort of, if you can sort of Glenelg or something, like in those locations, it sort of can really sort of take off if there's a really good employment node somewhere. They want to be close to that employment node. It's ideal. Yeah.
And you're a bit younger, so what do you reckon about his comment saying these young people just want to rent?
Oh, look, maybe I, being where I am with a young family, I'm probably not of that view. But,
we'll keep smashing him the whole video.
I can see how that would work for, my younger brothers or my younger sister who's, professional, they're learning, they're cutting their teeth in the world and whatnot. They want to travel to different locations and, experience what life has to offer. I think that absolutely works. One other sector that I kind of have an interest in is SDA housing as well. That's becoming quite popular. Retrofitting older houses that are appropriately kind of constructed to.
And for those at home, SDA
Specialist Disability Accommodation. I think the actual acronym is the explanation is. I think that's the sector that's really kind of taking off, and I think it's great. Providing people with physical needs the appropriate accommodation so they don't have to be nursing homes and large group homes. You've still got some independence there. That's a sector that's absolutely taking off as well.
Look, I personally own a few of them. I own four homes myself, and just seeing that level of support at that level, and what it does to the participants, and how they love being integrated in the community, is just absolutely amazing. Just seeing it firsthand, and you see these occupants in there, and they're ecstatic about the opportunity to sort of just
otherwise
integrate.
You're institutional, you're in an institution, and some people that are the participants, they're young, they've got the whole life ahead of them. They still want to live as normal as life as what they can. You've got varying degrees of, SDA housing, whether it's high physical support or, low care, but it's a great way for those participants to,
No, you're right. I remember seeing that. So years ago now, I was working at a major life insurer, and we had an option in the policy called respite care. The idea being that if you became long-term disabled, that the insurer would pay for the family to have a break, right?
Yeah.
And the challenge with that, when we researched it, was that there's nowhere to put people that are, not in retirement age anywhere other than retirement living facilities or aged care facilities.
Yeah.
So it's a real challenge if you're in that situation to go where they get pushed into aged care facilities.
Or hospitals, and
and which we can't handle. It just takes beds that we don't have.
And for the developer or the asset owner, as you would probably be able to speak to, Tim, it's reasonable returns.
No, it's a lucrative return. It's actually quite a lucrative return.
For the participant, the asset owner, you've got the supported independent living provider as well. Supported by the NDIS.
And how would you go lending to that? Because you've also worked in the major banks before, so you look at those sorts of structures. We run a private credit offering. What are the issues you look at when you're lending to something like that?
Look, I'm probably a little bit biased towards this asset class. I think it's great. At the end of the day, you've got a source of revenue. You're getting paid by the participant and their supporting package from the NDIS.
That's effectively government credit, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's long term. Those tenants are typically sticky. If you've got the right, correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, but I think if you've got the right SIL provider, supported independent living provider, managing the participants or providing the services that they need to remain in the community, I think it's a great mix. And for me, at the end of the day, if you're looking at the underlying asset, okay, what happens if it all falls over and the NDIS is not there, which is unlikely, very unlikely? Well, you can retrofit the house. And then you're back to a normal residential asset.
Exactly.
At an 80% LVR or whatever it is, and 30-year
But
long
banks
term.
typically do lower LVRs for that type of property now, right?
And that's a good point, and I can just add to that because I think that some of the debt providers have actually gone quite high on the LVRs, and they've because the values of these are probably double a normal residential property.
Got it.
So that becomes the issue. If it does get converted back,
Yeah.
then they have an
You
issue.
lose the kick.
So they've built a lot of these in sort of regional areas, and so those values can decrease quite considerably. So you just need to be a little bit careful.
But those
about
SDA
demonstrating.
houses have high density, right? So they would probably suit a co-living conversion. Would that be a fallback?
Yeah, it could be a fallback. Yeah,
Because I know you say like it's not, NDIS might not change, but it is a massive budgeting cost.
Correct.
The NDIS.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think one of the fair criticisms people have is that it's paying out to profits. Like these providers are making profits.
That's right.
We had block funding to, actually we've seen here in Adelaide recently a major not-for-profit built their business around block funding, which is the old model, and they failed in the conversion across to independent funding models, and they actually had to get bailed out by the state government. They've been around 80 years, but that was the challenge, was converting from a block funding arrangement to individualised payment. And I thought that was crazy, because you just go, hang on, all these NDIS providers are making profits. In fact, the biggest problem with my view is government money is guaranteeing profits for private operators, which is, I think, will come under further scrutiny. But it's good to talk about as a different sort of asset class.
Yeah.
And then, Leo, you've had a lot of experience with really large-scale projects and construction, some infrastructure as well. What do you think of the state of Australia's investment in infrastructure at the moment?
I think the government's trying very hard. I think it's different in different states, but I think the real issue is, how do you keep up? So looking for institutions to support and privatise some of this has been a solution. And what's interesting, a lot of the Australian institutions have gone offshore because the projects suit their risk return profiles, and a lot of our projects have been funded by offshore pension funds, which I find quite odd. It's almost like we're supporting toll roads in America rather than our own. So it's quite interesting the way it's panned out. I think if certain countries don't get their budget deficits in order, I think we're going to start seeing infrastructure not keeping up with the population movements. I think we're seeing that in Australia. I think we're always behind, especially in New South Wales.
Definitely road infrastructure in New South Wales. You guys get creamed, even with the tunnels and everything else.
The problem with the roads, though, it doesn't provide fixed time transport. So we actually need more public transport, like trains and metros. And unfortunately, they don't have the same cost benefit equation as a road. Believe it or not, a road actually gets a lot closer to 100% payback, whereas rail probably covers 30 to 40% in fares. You need to do the rest from value capture, and we don't have a proper value capture system in Australia.
What does that mean? Can you explain that?
If I put a train station or a train line near your house and a train station near your house, the value of your property actually goes up, and the government doesn't tax you for that extra value. You get a free kick.
Right.
So the government puts in the infrastructure and you get the benefit. And that happens on a lot of projects.
Okay. And does any other country do a better job of managing that, or do they just accept it?
We've done some trials in Australia in some areas, and they have had that. Like when the Harbour Bridge was built, for example, they taxed the residents of, I think, the North Shore, not the whole North End, but they charged them a small premium on their land rates to fund the bridge.
Right.
They've done something similar in Parramatta on a few buildings, and I don't think that worked very well.
That's similar to the US model, isn't it? Where the state
A
local
little bit.
taxes are
A little bit.
very localised.
What they do in Japan is quite interesting. When they build a new rail line, a high-speed rail line, what they do is they send it to a university for a study. They come back and report to government, and the government, apart from minor changes, normally accepts the recommendation. And part of that recommendation is that the train can only recover 30 to 40% in fares. So they actually give them a city or some land around where a station's going to be for a high-speed rail. So if, say, they go 100 kilometres per stop, and they give them a certain amount of land so they can make the 70% profit through that over time. Otherwise, you'd never get anything built.
So if we wanted to fund a fast rail from Brisbane to Melbourne via Sydney, you would need to give the developer a large land tract.
So there's been a couple of consortiums that have actually bought the land on the basis that the government will do that, and that hasn't really paid off for them. What typically happens with our governments is that they actually announce the project before they bought the land. Other people buy the land because they think it's coming and they profit. So this is the concept of value capture. How do you actually get some of that value into the project rather than just giving it for free to the private sector? Because the government, in effect, is spending a lot of the money on the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So it actually sounds pretty perverse for the government to do that. It's literally giving people a free kick.
Yeah, got it. I'm interested because I love trains now. I was in the US and to get from Washington to New York, I caught the train instead of flying.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was like train station right in the middle of the city to train station right in the middle of New York.
Yeah.
No hour-long, taxi ride into the city. Just was there, walked up the road, straight into meetings.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
It's better.
And I mean, I've always done the fast trains in China, and they've had this
They're
massive
fast.
infrastructure, and that's been amazing. But even in the US, where they're older, it's still fantastic infrastructure compared to airport.
Yeah,
stuff in
So the US was looking at fast rail in California, and I don't know where they've got to, like San Fran to LA, I think. I don't know if they halted it, I'm not sure.
We'll get Musk to do a tunnel underneath.
Well, that's what he was going to do. Did you see what he had?
I've seen
It's
them
like a
put-
tube. It's
yeah.
like a tube, and they literally put you in a carriage and it flies.
Well, there's a discussion here in Adelaide to do an underground rail line around here. And I'm not sure, I think it's just a discussion point at the moment. But to me, I asked the question, because I think we've always undercooked infrastructure in Australia. I think we've sort of always built it many years after the fact. I think in the 50s and 60s we did, big dam infrastructure, both in Tassie and Blue Mountains and all these other areas. And then we sort of went, nope, stop. And anytime someone suggests it, everyone just cans them and says, oh, we can't build stuff here.
One of the problems in Sydney is when Bradfield did his whole plan for Sydney, the Harbour Bridge, all the rail lines, all the roads, what's happened over time, successive governments have actually sold those corridors off. And then when you want to put the train line in, you've had to tunnel and that, or the road, and that typically costs about 8 times the cost of actually leaving it above ground. So for a short-term gain of selling off some land, they've actually ruined the ability to actually build out the network as it should have been.
Got it. So it's going to be a hard problem to fix then.
It's going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then when it costs a lot of money, sometimes it doesn't happen.
What do you guys think of industrial property? So we caught up with, I won't name anyone today, but we caught up with one of the major industrial developers in the southern sort of region. And obviously they're quite hot on it. But what do you guys think of industrial sheds and all the other work there?
I mean, as an asset class, it's progressed a long way because it's sort of really taken over from office and retail, and it's the proven asset class at the moment. It probably has been for the last 4 to 5, 6 years, maybe even longer.
Longer.
Yeah. So it's sort of and again, it's because with office buildings, they're sort of, you've got to put incentives in there to keep your tenants, and that all impacts on your yield. Whereas sheds are a little bit different. You've got a tenant, you get a rent, you might be a little bit of fit out, but then it's all sort of yield, and yield going back to the investors. So cap rates on that have come down a long way, and I think it's an absolutely proven asset class. It is overseas, and I think it's come a long way in the last sort of 10 years. Yeah.
So what are you, industrial doing what? Because, the general consensus is that we manufacture everything overseas. So what are we, is it storage, is it logistics, do we still have good manufacturing?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's mostly storage.
Yeah.
We don't do a lot of manufacturing, unfortunately, for the Australian economy. It is sort of all brought in. I mean, there is some manufacturing, but it's limited. I'd say sort of 25% of it is probably manufacturing. The rest is all storage. So it's sort of storage sheds. Well, it's probably a bit of an over-exaggeration. It might be 50-50.
But even then it would be like refrigeration and...
Yeah, that's right. It's storage of products. Yeah. So
completely off topic, and then I reckon we'll close in a sec. But one of the things I saw the other day is actually, one of the businesses we work with is a bit of a mad hatter, and he's gone right into 3D printing, right? So he runs grows plants and has a whole bunch of agriculture. He has agriculture here and overseas, and he started 3D printing all of the pots and parts that he actually needs, right? So what he does is he goes, I need 50 pots for this sort of hydroponic plant setup. And it's chilies for those South Australians wondering what hydroponics are being grown. It's chilies. But he just prints everything he needs. And the cost savings, insane. I would have thought that, buying these specialty pots and things would be crazy to print. You just buy them from China. These pots are $90 to get made overseas and brought here. He can print them for $7. Because I always thought 3D printing was like a cool experiment, but not going to save you money. And he's sitting there going, yeah, they take 4 hours to print, but I can just sit here and print them. But even better, he's had, design issues offshore that he's got a printer over there. He designs it, fixes the problem here, and then tells one of his staff to go pick it up from the printer because he's just solved the problem. So he had this like piping that he needed to convert, the size of the piping for the water tubing and filtrate and all the rest of it. And he's just gone, oh, just design it here, hit print, open the door, grab that part, click it on.
Yeah.
And I was looking at it, and he set up his, his lounge rooms converted into all these 3D printers. It's quite Mad Hatter, right?
Yeah.
But you look at it and go, that's the next wave of manufacturing. We won't be building stuff off in China and then shipping it here. We'll just go, send me the cord, print what I need in a little, vending machine at the end of the street.
You can actually build properties with that. I know a company that has built a car park, multi-level car park, using 3D printing. So it's obviously not using plastic to print, it's using some other material. I don't know if it's concrete, but
maybe
carbon.
Maybe that will be part of the equation in the new wave of modular construction in Australia.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, I mean, that gets talked about, modular, and there's probably a topic for another day. But yeah, this 3D printing thing blew my mind. I just went, that's going to be how it's going to be. It's just, it won't be manufactured overseas because you'll cut all that transport costs and all of the CO2 emissions from, big ships moving things back and forth. You just grab the particulate material, construct the thing you need as and when you need it.
What if the button on your oven breaks? Rather than spending $30 for your part, you can go get it printed and you're done.
I remember reading about it years ago when they did that with the Space Centre. Like they had the International Space Centre was like, well, we just, make stuff out of aluminium up there for what we need, right? Because shipping's a pain when you're in space. But
doesn't Amazon deliver there?
They've got a ship. I don't think it delivers. But just seeing that and what that looks like for us when we're looking at industrial and SDA and all these different property types when we're lending money. I mean, most private lending is sort of shorter term, but we do need to start thinking about rules change. So no, that's great. Well, look. That was a really great chat, guys. Thank you. And I know I dragged you all down here. We've got some actual work to do as well. We've got to head off to dinner soon. But thanks a lot for your time. And we'll record it. George will filter it and then put it on the internet.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Now for the serious part of the discussion.